Mark in the count. The swing arm now coming back as our countdown continues.
Good afternoon / evening, everyone. I'm Brick Something, and today I am joined by Andrew of Gayties Toys. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing well. My name's Andrew. I like pizza and I like to party.
Pizza, party, there you go. Check and check. I don't have either of those things, but what I do have, as I was just telling Andrew, is a power outage. So, and I live in a place where this doesn't usually happen. So I'm not in one of those places where it's common. And I will say it's been since 3/18. So it's been longer than usual. That said, I have some camping stuff. I have some, helpful battery-powered Ulanzi lights. I've got battery chargers for my phone. So for some reason the router goes out, I'll be here on my phone, and we'll see how long that lasts. So hopefully this is working. It's working for you. I'm assuming it is for folks, and they can tell me otherwise. Yeah, it looks like it's working. Yeah. So we'll see, but I'm just going to warn you. That's all, and we'll go from there. All right. Anyways, we've got a cool show, I think, for you today. I'm just sort of like, I love being able to switch it up a little bit, do a little bit of the quote unquote news stuff, but then also get like real focused on what my co-host is working on, because I'm really intrigued by it and into it. So no pressure, Andrew.
No, not at all. What am I working on?
No, but before we get started, we'll talk about sort of what you've been doing on YouTube and content, but just in general, to give people context, like I see a Snake Mountain behind you. What kinds of nerdy things are you into? And you got to, unfortunately, it's cut off in this view, but you're going to have to give us a sense of what that outfit is over there too. Yeah, so give us a sense of, yeah, what's up?
So I mean, I've never not collected forever. So it's a funny thing where I had all, I was born in like the 70s. I had all the 80s toys. Some have survived to my collection now. Likewise, it's a pretty big collection. I'm looking over it now. It's a lot of the big dogs from the 80s. So you got your Star Warses, your Joes, your He-Mans, Thundercats, whatnot. More lately, there's a real resurgence in vintage styles that I'm really liking, and not necessarily reaction, but there's third parties that'll do like new characters of old Star Wars figures and stuff like that. So like really enjoying that. Toxic Crusader coming out from Trick or Treat, like just there's weird stuff coming out that I'm really kind of zeroed in on. So I need a bigger place. Currently, I live downtown in an apartment, but I keep like eyeing the dog's bed. I'm like, glass cabinet, that could go here.
Yeah, the dog needs like its own collection, so it needs.
He sleeps everywhere. Exactly.
That's wonderful. But so all like you checked a couple of different brands, and you said format. So do you tend to lean in towards third parties who are kind of like using the old formats and doing that? Or do you go for any of the modern, like taking like a 3 3/4 and going into 7-inch kind of thing?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'd say for like vintage stuff, I've sort of like a lot of it's actually in storage currently. So like I do a lot of like Marvel Legends. I'll do like X-Men 91, 92 specifically. I don't really buy the new He-Man, but I did collect classics when that came out, and that's really like the bulk of the shelf currently, just because there's so many of them. For newer stuff, I mean, there was like Legends of Dragonor for some reason that really spoke to me, so I went real hard on that. I think there's a dragon coming soon. Looking around. Yes, I'll look overseas stuff like Malfax, Badman Hush, literally anything. It's just sort of, and it's one of those things I think like most of us could sort of appreciate that you display these things, you collect them, you want people to see them and talk about them, and it's really sort of like a reflection of you and a reflection of like your interests and what makes you a nerd kind of thing. So it is very much like a kind of a trophy wall, if anything.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so I don't know. I want to give people context of the kinds of things that you're into and collecting, but then we'll get into in a little bit after we say hello to the chat what you've been doing on YouTube because I think it's super exciting. First off, and first, what's up? Ostradamus is going to say, friends. What's up, Oz? Saying hello, friends. Great to see you, and thanks for letting me know that I didn't turn off yesterday's stream. Go check that out. That's a fun little ending. Yeah, it's a fun little awkward ending. I wish I could get on there like Deadpool or Ferris Bueller and go like, it's over. You can go. Anyways, Thanos, what's going on? Thanos, thank you again as always for helping with the links. You'll probably find that not all the links are there because the power went out. But thank you for helping for as far as you can. Cute Cult, you forgot the Tiamat on the graphic. She's a lady. Oh, I didn't forget Tiamat. There was just so many. We'll get to her for sure. Nolan, hello. Thank you for joining us and making us legit as a ToyTube experience. Star, hello. Great to see you. We'll working some sci-fi in there, I swear. Joe G, last week's co-host, which is awesome. Hello, Joe. We're all kind of riding high a little bit from yesterday's Cosmic Legions reveals, which will also kind of work its way in today's conversation. Ray Black, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining us. Other Ray Paz, just kidding. You're all Rays. What's going on? Copyright Wizard of Oz. Frankie Rivera, what's going on? Let's go. And Collecting Brothers. Hello, John. I said Frankie Rivera, but I'll say it all again. And I think that's where we're at. All right, folks. Thank you so much for jumping in early. Hopefully others will join us as we go. But if you're joining us on the replay, let me give you a heads up on how this goes. So down there, it's about to mention a URL that says bit.ly/bricksomethingnews. And that's referring to a document that you'll be able to go check out at the end. Also, you can use the QR code that is kind of happening. Is it not happening? Where is it? There it is.
There it is.
Andrew, that you can use to kind of check out all the links that we're talking about. They'll definitely be there after the show, internet willing, battery willing, but they'll be there because, yes, I definitely want you to kind of check out, listen to what we're saying, look at what's on the stream. But like, if you're like me, I want to click, I want to go find stuff out for myself. And I want to show those folks some love by following them, subscribing as well. So try and make that easy. Okay. With that said, let's do some newsy stuff and then get to what Andrew's all about over on YouTube. That said, I got to do some magic powers. I forget if I remember. I do. How's that work? There you go. And then I think we go here. Yeah. See, I don't know. It's just I do it it's not like I do it every week. There you go. That's what I was looking for. All right, folks. Thank you for being patient with my professionalism. Let's go here and share this. And does that? Hey, look, we did a thing.
Hey.
Okay. Newsy stuff. Let's get it right out of the bat. I know folks are like, man, he's talking about this Brutal Realm stuff a lot. And no, I don't receive a paycheck, none of that. But I'm just really into things, especially into indie toy makers, especially things that I think are providing us with something new and different or otherwise lacking on our shelves. And so the Brutal Realm Kickstarter, which I have been talking about, is in full swing. And I did share on my channel, at least, sort of like they've been trying to get, they're a brand new company. So they're like doing the Kickstarter while also doing paint masters, prototyping, etc. They just sort of finished the painted prototypes this past week of their 3 unnamed quote unquote army builder characters. They're calling them barbarian warriors. So here you have the sort of American barbarian warrior. So fully painted, meant to kind of like give us that skin tone and that look of folks from our world that might fall under the Native American or Indigenous American. I'm digging it. I'm really like, there's something about the painted prototype that changes it from like the gray, right? From what when you're seeing a render. So Anyway, and I know I said from our world. I swear, there's got to be there are people that actually have this physique. I think they actually modeled this after Lou Ferrigno, like at sort of Lou Ferrigno's like biggest. That's what they used as the model. So there's a basis. But in general, as I sort of show this, what are you even thinking about this Kickstarter? Any reactions, thoughts?
I think of like body type. I'm like, there's only one way to get that kind of body, and it's not sunshine and weightlifting. But I digress. But no, this is great. It's just, it's a great clean form, and it sort of harkens to a few lines. Like you get a bit of like, that kind of like Four Horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like classics or mythic legions, but also like I'm seeing a bit of like Storm collectibles in there too. Like it looks really posable. I really like that.
Oh, it's definitely the posable part. He was over. Sorry, he being James was over, and Jason were both over on Paralleled Universe, Wade's channel on Friday night, and they were kind of playing with a prototype, and it's amazing how the shoulder moves, almost like it's so fluid. And but yes, definitely. And you're right. It does harken to some of those body types. You mentioned classics in particular, which for me, it's funny. Like after a while, after seeing every single figure in that buck, it started to feel a little bit monotonous, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which I think just kind of goes to my general point of like, I love this kind of stuff, but I love the variety, right? So give me a Brutal Realm huge guy, give me I don't know, a Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons, like the younger kid, like whatever, like give me that variety, the big ogres, that helps me. So I don't know. Your eyes lit up when I said that. What were you thinking?
It's just sort of funny. I mean, like, classics went on for, I want to say 7 years, and they kind of just stuck to a book, and they really were committed to that kind of thing. But you see something like, this is definitely an evolution of something like you would see with like Marvel Legends, where we start off with like gnarly Toy Biz, and then that Bucky cap really kind of changed the game, and now we're seeing how Black Widow sort of made like the women much more, engaging. And this definitely seems like another step in that evolution. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of these elbow joints a lot more recently, almost kind of like doubled up but pinless. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the African Barbarian Warrior, looking great. I really love all the head sculpts on these, and of course, the bodies, the muscles, great looking. And it's got this double ball on the diaphragm and on the waist, so these are going to move great. And then this was also the one that was the most recent reveal, and this is the European Barbarian Warrior, fresh with those dreads, and just like has seen some life, some grizzled life. I dig it. And actually, classics I think has been going on went for 12 years, and the only reason I know that is because I've been doing this thing with Cobb on Masterverse, and we were kind of doing a research, and that was amazing to me too. But 12 years of that, same buck, kind of at a certain point, it kind of just it gets monotonous. I don't mean, but yeah, it gets monotonous by definition. So,
and that was when, like, I think their first stab at Filmation, that really kind of like changed the game. It was very much similar buck, but at least they made a new body, and they were like, okay, well, this is better, not great, but better.
100%. Let's see what folks are saying. Like folks are looking at the different variety and sort of saying like, where did I see that? Oh, Thundar, like Thundar Customs. That's the other thing. Those are meant like, these are meant to be kind of their basic buck. It comes with a couple weapons, and then you can get accessories for like, armor and stuff. For this in particular, there are named characters that come with more, but that's what these are meant for. It's like they know that people are going to want to customize, and so have at it, Haas. So love that. Adam is here watching from the pool. Good for you, Adam. I'm operating on batteries here, so my feet is in a kiddie pool. No, it's not. Let's see. I really want to. Oh yeah, I saw John's post on Instagram about like doing the primal. I don't know if you're that Brendan Tardak.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Like doing doing a thing like that, which is great. Let's see. There's a fella from the Monster Factory called Grey Wolf, and he has a natural build and does it. Okay, cool. Thanks, Oz. I should take a look at that. And yeah, Nolan's feeling the barbarian this one, which I think looks pretty awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
mostly
the
for
hair's
the
great.
dreads.
Yeah.
And the designs have grown on Rick. Yeah, Rick, I'm curious, was it from the Friday Wade thing or even just over time it's kind of grown? Absolutely. People are going to be making all sorts of superheroes. And it's funny. So here's what Rick says. He says, yeah, at first they looked too big, but now I'm used to the look. It's yeah, the stuff just sort of like the idea of normalization almost. Like once you get used to a thing, you're kind of like, oh, your brain accepts it.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is I'm on this kick now where I've been buying some like really cheap and cheerful 90s toys like Earthworm Jim,
Uh-huh.
like Batman the Animated Series. And a lot of them are like 4.5 inch scale. And in my brain, they're all different heights, but they're not. Like it's all the same thing, but just the body types are so wildly different. The proportions, the
Yeah.
everything that you kind of forget. You're like, oh, this is all just flatlined, like, Playmate scale, all 5 inch.
It's funny. That's a whole other conversation. But you say cheap and cheerful 90s toys. There was a thing that happened in the 90s where like some of these toy lines were almost like the language in the 80s was like, let's take a buck and reuse it. And then in
Mhm.
the 90s, you got things like Earthworm Jim, where like every character was almost like a redesign from top
Oh
to
yeah.
bottom. And it was kind of wild. Like, even though the first couple of Ninja Turtles themselves had a particular body, then you had the Shredder in there that was a completely different body. You had the Splinter in
Mhm.
there that was a completely different body. April. It was like something happened at that in the 90s where like, okay, we got to up it and let's just sculpt for days and tool for
I
days
mean,
or something.
everything in the 90s was a little more extreme, and like, I mean, also, I mean,
Yes,
this was a lot of
it was the
Playmates too, where
zeitgeist.
they were Playmates was I on my channel, which we'll get to, but like I sort of
Mhm.
like I sing their praises all the time because they were rich off of Ninja Turtles money
Yeah,
going into the
they were.
90s. So they were like, we
Yeah,
do what we want. Like we'll
right.
make every new sculpt, we'll make a dozen women per line, we'll do whatever we feel like because we
It's so
are
true.
flush with cash, so we'll do it.
It's so true. Yeah. All right. So as far as the Kickstarter goes, it's chugging away. It's almost at about a third of what their goal is, 140. So like if you're thinking about it like a curve, usually there's like this big thing in the front, and then things kind of peter out for the majority of the days that the thing is live. We've got 25 days more to go, and then at the end there's this other sort of like swoop, like a normalized bell curve or something. So yeah, shooting for like a third in the front and kind of like letting that sag, and then hopefully getting that last third and then end is kind of the hope to hit that 140. I think there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time. There's hope to at least hit the 140. We'll see beyond that, but these newer toy lines, they need the push, which is why I've featured it for the last 3 times. But then I'll move on. Another Kickstarter that happened just this week was the Kelp Tides thing. And I want to shout out Sebastiano, who has done a lot of sculpts for like, does the Maestro Union stuff, like the Fury Planet, like highly detailed, intense kind of figures. But he also worked on this project, and he particularly did the articulation sculpts. But I know it's a little bit different from some of the stuff that I share, but I like to highlight things that I think are either missing or doing something that I think is super unique and interesting. And the idea of like a merman line, I find pretty fascinating for a number of reasons, but then also kind of doing it in a style that might be that skew maybe a little bit more like towards what did you call it? Cheerful,
Cheap
cheap
and
and
cheerful.
cheerful. So
Yeah.
cheap, probably, I'm not trying to, but cheerful, like this notion of like for maybe like a younger demographic or like a demographic that's leaning more into like old school toys where they look like kind of cartoony. So, I don't know. I know that it's on some people's radar. I've heard people talking through it, but it's intentionally mermen, and that you see the body type there, and then they'll show the articulation. Yeah, I love that you're laughing and doing this.
Like those are pronounced nipples, I gotta say.
Are yours not? Anyways,
Yeah, let's just show them, whip them out right now. This is my
but it
favorite. I saw these on Instagram, and they kept on popping up in my feed, and I was like,
Mhm.
what is this? And I had to kind of stop and actually like take a look. I'm like, oh, it's a Kickstarter. That's really cool, but like just so shocking. Like just a fun idea. Like
It is. It is. And the idea of like, well, a couple of things. First off, I've said this in my posts about it. Like, I really do think that we're kind of at this stage with all the indie toys and, even the big guns, kind of like there's a lot of toys being made. So I think people are looking for kind of innovations or something different. And we're seeing a little bit more of this kind of like experimentation with the lower body, like different shapes. So we've seen Epic Hacks do like a snake-like body. We've seen Masters of the Universe do a snake-like lower body. We're gonna
Mhm.
see Globulus at some point with a snake-like body or like that big old ball. So like, I feel like we're on the cusp of more and more of this kind of character coming through. Merman's got that going on in the Turtles of Grayskull. And then so I think on that end, it's kind of interesting to see how people approach the articulation. Two, for an indie thing, it reminds me a little bit even of like Plunderlings. I don't know if you're familiar with those at
Yeah.
all. Like
And it's one of those things too, like you could buy even just one. Like, I mean,
yeah.
that's one of the weird things too. Like I've got like friends who like, just obsessed with mermaids, go figure, or mermen
Yep.
rather. But like I'm sort of keeping an eye on this, and I think I might back a few of them just to sort of like throw in for Christmas gifts, because it's the thing you can have your like on your fireplace mantle and be like gay.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, that's
but
what
it's
I
super
put.
fun.
You pledged. Yeah, you said one. It's like, yeah, I'm pledged for one, and you said gay because like the merman and mermaid thing in general, folks don't like. There's a sort of a tradition among the queer community, at least queer sort of like art historians have kind of looked at that a lot. And I know that a lot of like, I'm here in South San Francisco, and like some of the organizations, the trans youth organizations and queer youth often will use mer people, I suppose, as
Merfolk.
well, there's the notion of like the lower, like you don't see the genitalia in the lower body, but you're focused on something else, right? You're focused on how they're presenting elsewhere, and like all those kinds of, that part of it I think is fascinating, which it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I can appreciate that.
But
And
also, like the men themselves, they do have a bit of a Tom of
oh yeah,
Finland thing happening, where it's like,
yeah,
if you're
yeah,
not familiar, it's a very, very famous like kind of gay erotica thing
yeah,
with just huge muscles, and again, usually bearded, very like high fantasy, but in a very kind of almost kink way. And like this is not that, but like sort of in that family.
yeah. I'm 100% agree. And then we do that with their stuff with like He-Man and some of that end of things, right? But like also the accessories, I was like, okay, particular this, you can probably guess which one I got, and that's this guy, Marino, with that
Mm-hmm.
cool blue hair. Look at that beard and
Yes, the hair
hiding
and the orange.
hiding the hairline. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Marino.
Yeah. It's not a wig. It's not a wig. I swear.
But this thing,
This
like,
is this thing. This is what got me. I was like, I want that. Like, I want this
yeah.
to be my Halloween
Oh
costume.
wait,
Just this
where is
big
it?
rubber hat.
Where was it? So just the notion of like, because there's also this little bit of it where the person's also talking about like inspired by marine biology, like the accessories. I don't know where it is, but there's somewhere where he has it on and it's a helmet. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea of like this fish head thing.
Well, it's
Anyways,
very like Pokemon hat too. It's like it's a
yeah,
lot of things. It's a lot of things all at once. And I don't know. It jumped out at me on Instagram, and I'm like, tell me more.
yeah. So I'm into it. I want to support and just get the word out, and and support Seba too with his work, and it's cool. I like the sculpts. Yeah, it definitely skews a little bit more on the cartoony end than what's a lot on my shelf, but I could see the sculpt working with a little bit of paint. Anyway, that said, that's Kelp Tides, and I think that's kind of yeah, that's the main thing before we get to that's what's up. But before that, here we go. Let's see what are folks thinking. So Dorlaxon popped right in, probably right at maybe some nipple action. I'm not sure. What's up, man? Good to see you. And the fish tail, ain't it? You're not feeling it, or
Too
I don't
short.
know.
Size queen.
Yeah, perfect. Mint with card is here. Good evening, gents. Was watching the new Batman series. Oh, I got to check that out. Thank you for the reminder. I also got to check out that Kite Man show. I saw that pop up. Those nips could cut glass. I definitely know you're talking about nipples, so I'll let you go there. But
Have a good look.
yeah, I think you're about right. Wait, let's double check, folks. What do you? No.
Well, it's funny too. It's like you have like He-Man generally has nipples, but they're like very flesh. These guys are like, no, you're going to look directly in their eyes.
That's how they get you. It's not a siren song. You're like
No.
mesmerized by the nipples. What's up? Thanos is already planning some shots. Nick, what's going on? Thank you for joining us. Mermaid Zaddy for sure. Here you go. Jonathan knows what's up. He wishes his nips looked that stellar. Just
I've
telling
heard
you
they do.
a little manicure. Oh, he's heard things. He's heard things.
Word in the mean streets.
Allison Troy is here. Hello, hello, hello. And yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
You've got that beard. You just need the lower body. All right. And Sean, thank you for joining us. Hello, hello, hello. And there you go. We'll just leave that up there for a little bit. And then on that note, let's okay, so let's shift away from the boys for a little bit. And let's go to That's What's Up. Fast forward to what I usually do at the end, but let's go here because I want to talk about this. So this is a series over on the Gayties Toys channel. Please head over there, check it out, subscribe, but definitely check out this playlist because this is kind of the main series you've got going on your YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, pretty much the only thing I've got going on. I've got some other ideas on the side, but this is sort of my weekly roundup of who we missing.
So you've got 33 roughly weeks of content here. What can you explain the concept of MIA 80s Ladies?
So the concept is that I think as many people who grew up in the 80s or even the 90s can attest is that you never finished a team. There was a lot of cartoons, a lot of toy lines that there was, one person missing and you know exactly who that is. So I really decided to go through all of it. And I thought I had maybe 5 videos in me. And I was like, okay, we'll talk about, like Jenny, JB, some other people. Thanks, Alley Cat. And just sort of talk about like what happened, what we know, what we don't know, some speculation. I mean, there was generally you can just say sexism or female figures don't sell, which is sort of not, I kind of challenged that in my very first video as well. But, and sort of like, like where we're at now. And for a lot of them, there's, even Stellara, like she, came out just this year. So that's sort of a nice big happy check at the end of the video saying like, not only we get Stellara, we got that Stellara, we get the vintage one. So it's really kind of a happy ending for me. And yeah, I think I'm like almost 40 videos now. And I have a pretty long list, and every now and then, like at least once a week, someone says, "What about so and so?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's like someone else I forgot." So it's a lot. It's a shocking amount.
I'm curious. Do you know? Is there a current number count on your list at least?
It's under 100, and I'm hoping to keep it that way because I used to do these twice.
Well,
a week,
you're
and
at
now
33. Yeah, just to give you a sense, just for some context for everybody else. That's
and there's some I'll pair up because I'm like this is. I don't have enough talk about say with like the Lunatics. I'm like I'm not knowledgeable enough about the Lunatics specifically, but for one video, not bad.
Yeah. No, and they don't, they're going to be different varieties too. Like you've got some that are longer and some that are shorter, and but it's great because I think this. Have you done the research to see if anybody else was talking about this topic about kind of like identifying the figures that were missing? Okay.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of research. There's a lot of like I've talked to people who there's a lot of like secondhand information, unfortunately, but like they've talked to creators of the toy lines or people who worked in the 80s, and even like Cops is sort of like on everyone's mind suddenly because Fresh Monkey Fiction might be doing them, and they considered one. It was probably Mainframe, and then that conversation literally went for like 10 minutes in the boardroom, and then they said, "Nah, we're not doing that."
Yeah, and I agree with this comment because I've appreciated what you've chosen to look at. So Allison says, I appreciate that Andrew gives as much gravitas to rarer stuff like Inhumanoids as he does G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Mo2, etc. 100%. Like, I'm glad to kind of see like even the notion of like Sarah Connor. Like that's crazy given she is the central figure in my head of that movie.
Yeah, I was mad in that video, like mad. I was like, we've had a few recently, but like I was just like, Aliens did so well, in the ladies department, including two queens, Ripley, all that, but like Terminator just said no, like the most badass chick of the decade, and no.
Yeah. Such a trip. Wow. Well, but I dig this, and I kind of wanted to sort of center our conversation on today of sort of bouncing off this. It's like, yeah, in the 80s and 90s, they definitely fell short, and there were a lot of figures that were essentially missing. And, as you said, who they were. Lo and behold, it was mostly the women. And yeah, some of that thinking continues, right? Famously, Todd McFarlane has some choice quotes about why he doesn't do a lot of female figures, a lot of women figs. And when he does, it's like maybe another Wonder Woman variant. Although to the company's credit, we've gotten a couple of things lately, right? Like Starfire and some other things that are coming out. So
yeah, I feel like the multiverse is doing better in that regard.
Yeah. But, again, so that gets to the point of like, hey, yeah, 80s, 90s, I think there was a way of approaching things where in their brains it was very simple. We can't sell these figures, or there's a quote unquote boys aisle and a girls aisle. And there was like this weird split, which, yes. And like in general, that weird sort of larger sociological split between what's for boys and what's for girls, I think obviously has shifted. It's causing quite a bit of drama these days, but among some. But like at the end of the day, for our toys, like we just approach these things as like, I watched this show, I saw all these cool characters, like where I'm missing some people, MIA, missing in action, right? And so,
well, I mean, even these first two here, like these are core members of the cast. You pick up a DVD player, and they're on the cover, like, and it was such a slap in the face. I did it in my very first video. I did a bit of an intro, a bit of a primer, a bit of a toy history lesson kind of thing. And there was, I did challenge the, female figures don't sell, because they've been saying that since before I was born, which is some number of decades. But this would have been probably like mid 70s kind of thing. They started saying this story, and I'm like, we didn't have computers back then, for one thing. So like, I would love to see the numbers. I would love to see the analytics. I would love to see why they're saying this, and I would love to see why they keep saying it, because I don't know if that's still necessarily an option. And also, I mean, if you say female figures don't sell, why is it when I go into Walmart and there's AOA Wolverine sitting there, does that mean the male figures don't sell? Does that mean the Wolverine figures don't sell? Because we know that's not true.
Right. Yeah, and at the end of the day, I would love to see the numbers as well. But there's also this element of, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that when you don't make them, and we're not used to seeing them regularly, some of us don't have the option to buy them. Or if you're kind of on the sidelines and you're like, well, I kind of like those characters, I guess collecting toys isn't for me, or collecting this line isn't for me, and then they just kind of don't buy. And so they don't get into the habit of buying action figures. And I say they broadly because, yes, that might be young women. That might be women in general. But it also could be like some of us who are like, yeah, like you said, I want to complete a team. You're never going to complete it. I'm not going to bother. And so anyway, yeah, who knows? I'm being told by my lovely assistant, my son, that the power is back on, which is an awesome thing. So we're going to cross our fingers. I'm about to change this network. If I disappear for a second, I'll come back.
I might be the host, and then you're in trouble.
Maybe. Did I lose you?
Yes. You're still there. Nope. And he's gone. So this is where I take over. And it gets weird. I will. Oh.
Magic. So I guess it is back.
Power.
Yeah, sorry. I know that was fun and awkward, but that's okay. That's how things have been on the channel lately. Again, yesterday's stream was hilarious. I left my two guests, and the stream just kept going. Anyway, okay, we were here. Cool. Thank you for that break. And by the way, on that note, can I just go and say thank you? Here's a commercial break. How's this for you? An actual commercial break, because it's a paid commercial break. Man, thank you, Solo Sinner, for dropping in a $20 Canadian super chat, which means it's even more than $20. But thank you so much. Had to hold back on the super chat because I didn't want it to look like I was throwing dollar bills at the Peck Daddy. You should just throw them. Just live a little. It's fine. Man, I'm glad I caught you too. Yeah, it has been a little bit, but it's all good. I'm glad you're able to hang out, and thank you so much for that. It's obviously huge. So thank you. We got Toy Connections here in the house that joined us since then. We had Red 5 jump in too. And I will throw you. There you are. Yeah, you made it. What's going on? And did I say Ken? I did just say Ken, right? Let me say Ken again. Hey, Ken. He still needs to catch up on your RC video. There's your Transformers guy. We were just talking about that before. Let's see. Solo Sinner was holding on hope for Galadriel from Visionaries, but
yeah, I had some customs made from, I kit bashed some Visionaries figures and made Galadriel and Virulina. So like, check my video, like and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. But like, yeah, it is. There are 3D modelers out there who will do the heads, the weapons, the helmets. So if you've got inclination to paint or to pay someone to paint, as I do, it's possible to get them. But again, too, like we talked earlier about how I love that there's sort of like companies doing vintage lines, almost like re-releasing them. Like Playmates has been doing with Turtles, Trick or Treat with Toxie, Sectors essentially is a 1-for-1. And very early on, they're all doing like Stellara, Yvonne, April. They're getting out like the figures pretty quickly. So I'm loving that. Whenever I do a video, I'm like, yeah, there's this highly articulated new version of this chick. However, if you want to complete your team, like, and I keep looking at every Comic-Con, every, PulseCon, I look at Hasbro, I'm like, give me that RC prototype. I know it's ugly. I prefer it's ugly. The whole original Transformers line was.
That's how Transformers. Yeah, thank you.
Ugly.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
like
so true about Transformers.
And she was like peach and orange, like she was hideous. And I was like, look, you could do 2 colorways and just like write that, do a, what's the ones, the new ones with the articulation, the
Masterpiece,
brand new line.
Oh
no, not Masterpiece. They're doing the vintage line with like more cuts.
Very limited on my Transformers info.
I'm trying to find a good line, so I keep looking around. No one's
That's
quite
okay.
sticking the landing
That's
yet.
Okay. Well, let's see. Ebony Leopard, hey, what's going on? I have a prototype cast unpainted of that Bucky O'Hare, Jenny.
I almost got one on eBay many years ago from some guy in France. He was asking for 15,000, and I was like, how many organs do I need to sell to get this thing? I got him down to 12,000, and still I'm like, I can't justify this.
What's when they say prototype cast Ebony Leopard, are we talking like someone took the prototype and then recast it? Is that what I'm understanding? Maybe not. I don't know. That's cool.
Useful.
Allison saying, Allison, you're confusing me with your multiple accounts. Look at you, but thank you for making it seem like a lot of people are watching the stream. As a new word to Transformers person, his RC video was very helpful. There you go. Oh, I guess this must have been when I was there. Yeah, and then there was one. Let's see. Okay, let's go ahead and then move on. So that's the concept. And I was starting to say before the whole internet thing, people are doing it differently in the 21st century. Isn't that funny to say? You and I, most of our lives existed in
future,
a different century. In the 21st century, toys we know are in this current explosion. And in this moment in 2024, there are so many different people making toys. Some of them are based on some of these old classic nostalgic brands. Some of them are brand new things. And so what's interesting to me is that some of that hesitation to do women figures is shifting. Like some are definitely better about it, or just like upfront, like boom, we're starting right off with some women. And then others, because of tooling costs or whatever, maybe take one wave, 2 waves, 3 waves, or whatever. So I want to take a look at that. I wanted to look at 3 key areas. I want to look at what the indies are doing. And then I want to look at what the sort of what I call the keepers of the nostalgia, or keepers of those classic brands, the people who still have the licenses to make the G.I. Joe, the Star Wars, the Thundercats, how they've been doing. Have they improved the way they've approached it from the 80s? Are they now giving us some of these the women that were missing in the past? Heads up, they are. And then what was the last one was, the customizers who are filling in the gaps and going back. And I know that's definitely something that you've already spoken to, but all right, so let's go ahead and do that. And let me start off, I mentioned it earlier, with Four Horsemen Studios, who are celebrating their 25th anniversary this year. the 10th anniversary of their sort of flagship line, Mythic Legions. And then this is a newer line that's been out for a couple of years now, Cosmic Legions. And last night they just revealed, let's see, this would be 1, 2, 3, I think like their 4th full wave of figures. And so right off the bat, they included one woman, one female alien, I guess, but it's a woman character in this latest wave. But you know, they're never absent. So women are never absent from. I want to say that's true. I believe that's true for Mythic Legion's waves, and oftentimes there are more within a wave. But in general, that's something that I think Mythic and Cosmic Legions has been really good about, not just in terms of like sort of the genders, but also just like putting them in key roles in sort of the story, as well as just an overall variety. So like I'm looking at this right now. This is the picture of all the figures that were revealed yesterday and are for pre-order right now. And like, just look, you squint your eyes and like size, shape, it's all there. Like you've got 4-legged creatures that sort of cut off on the left. You got different aliens, of course, and that lends itself to the variety. But you got different heights, different leg lengths. You know, so I dig it. And so I can kind of do the quick flip through just to get you a sense. I just passed the women character, but just to get like a quick, like, oh yeah, there's a lot of kind of different things going on here. Love that animal.
Oh my gosh. I swear I didn't think Cosmic Legion would take. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought this, but like they were, you know, just hitting such stride with Mythic Legions, and this one I was like, I don't know. And then here we are, wave 4.
And then psych. No, for sure.
What do I know?
And so this is the one women character from the wave that, and they're even doing like reuse. So that's actually a head from Mythic Legions repainted. And I think it's such a great use of that. Here she is sort of fighting. And I'm going to try and go through this quickly because I could be stuck in the indies for days. The last wave prior to this, she showed up, sort of like the one of the leaders of the Ox crew. So she looks fantastic. I love her too. The head is cool, those cool like alien ridges, but also like just super cute. You know, I love that, like, you know, they find a way to make like aliens.
The pop of color. I mean, like just the conflicting colors between her head and the rest of her suit. It's just, it'll pop on your shelf. It pops in a picture. So it's 100%. Just a good design.
Yeah, we're always giving Trevor credit, as we should, for his awesome photos. But then also like, hey man, you're kind of cheating because these are some of the best looking figures. No, not really. I'm kidding. But yeah, he's obviously working with some really great looking stuff. Yeah. Oh, wait, Nostalgia, that's $5 for you. Okay, cool. Copyright Nostalgia Unboxed. This was another one from that previous wave. When first shown, I was like, man, this was totally giving me like some of the new Star Wars books, High Republic vibes. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? Because it's like layered with this giant helmet and everything. And then they do the reveal, and such a cool looking alien woman in there. Oh, so cool. I love just the hair, the I was gonna say makeup, but the alien face.
Yeah, she's getting a big win from Star Trek Prodigy, which is sort of I guess like the kid show Star Trek, but she very much gives that kind of vibe with the two-tone light blues. I'm a sucker for like just like that pop of color, so she looks great.
Yep. That poof right there, boom, and it just against the kind of more neutral drab fatigue looking stuff. We've got people who are captured with this wave 100%, including the alien horse, alien tiger. I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess they ride it, but whatever. Alien battle cat. Agreed, Joe. They did kill it with the reveal. Had such a good time. And then even from previous waves, this was essentially the second wave. Yeah, I want to say. The scorpion-ish woman bounty hunter, I believe she was. Is she one of the bounty hunters? Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. But she's cool looking. She's like she's a scorpion lady with like transparent plastics on the legs and stuff.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So
Also, I love sort of like the '90s, early 2000s midriff too. You're just all like, I do 2,000 squats and sit-ups a day, and you will know about it.
yeah, my action figures make me feel bad, but yes, no, they're fantastic. Their head kind of looks like a turkey too, but yeah. Again, one of these awesome reveals where it's like, oh, who's that armored character? And you can kind of see it in the body type, but then when they reveal her, this is one of my favorites from this. That
Oh yeah,
is it that same wave? It's a third wave, I guess this was what I might be wrong. I think there might have been 5 waves. I don't know. Um, and kind of cool, just like the variety. And again, of course, the color and all that, but like they're not lacking for women figures. If we think about what was happening in the 80s, it just seems so few and far between when we'd actually get them to do these characters. And here you have this indie company who I say indie company, but truly the Four Horsemen have been around for 25 years working on other people's lines, whether it was Mattel's stuff or, work with Super 7 and all sorts of other bigger companies and bigger IP. But I'm sure from their experience there was probably a little frustration or at least maybe savvy to go like, who we know what's missing because we often were probably like, can't we like create a woman line for you, but our woman character,
yeah.
but so they filled that void.
And I mean, the funny thing is, like, there's always the female figures don't sell, and you're like, well, they don't sell it because they don't make them. But there's I mean, the folks from the original Masters of the Universe line
Uh-huh.
always say, they're like, we made She-Ra because Tilo sold so well, because the boys were constantly asking for her because she was such an integral part of the show, that they said, like, let's just spin off and do something else, because I think their audience was like almost or over just over like 50% young girls. So
That's right.
Tilo was hot, so too
Yep.
bad.
Yep. Sorry, just real quick. I don't know if Art G was talking about this about like unopened figs. I'm right there with you. Yeah, I've got some catching up to do. Look at Ken. They're borderline mainstream. It depends on what the definition is. I'll wait for the Toy Connections video on it. But yeah, no, they're absolutely indie. I would say like, to me, I've always said that they're kind of the gold standard for a lot of the way they approach toy making and their marketing and their interaction with fans, all of that stuff, storytelling. They're doing a lot of really cool things that I think they can do because they're an indie company. Obviously, they're growing. I don't know if indie means size necessarily, but like, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. But this. Dorlaxin. Indie toys are like indie video games made by fans for fans, and I'm all in it, 100%. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Well, I mean, just funny enough, I mean, Ken there, I mean, like his Delta 17, I want to say, they had like two women right in the first wave, and like I actually like scrambled to buy I think Death Sparrow, the Baronessy type figure. I adore her. Like, I just adore her. She fits so well in with like the kind of the Joe realm.
100%. Spoiler alert, we'll get to Delta 17 and I should move. So yes, I am stuck here because again, this is the gold standard. So we'll talk a lot more about cosmic and mythic real quick, just because I do think they've done such a good job of that, especially giving us different body types. So here's Vorga, which was sort of this bigger, bulky Vasquez type from Aliens, with a big old gun, as well as like Nexaziri, who's like, slender, athletic, so it's kind of cool to see that done. Switch over to their other line. I always say they have 2 lines, but it's like, no, they've got a whole other line called Figure Obscura. This is the most recent, and it's a 2-pack, and they included a woman god, a female god from God of Egypt, Egyptian god. Again, backlog, but just it's really cool what they're doing. And then of course there's the fantasy, right? Mythic Legions, whether it's some of the newest figures that are yet not released, like these. Again, like Vorga, this is on a bigger, bulkier 1.0 body. Sorry, just Mythic Legions terminology, and I might not even had that right. I think I had that right. But we got dwarven women. Finally, this is a new thing in the line. And then, of course, of all shapes, sizes, levels of death, of non-death. I love her because she's got multiple heads too, one with a nose, one without. Just cool stuff. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of reuse too. You've got, knights.
Which they do with the men as well. So it's not like, no knock on that.
On which?
Like they do on the male figures too. Like, so there's a lot of like.
Oh, the reuse.
Yep.
Yes. 100%. You're absolutely right. Yes, that was definitely not a knock. And I keep forgetting to put in links, but there's a bunch, and the Mythic Legions stuff and Cosmic Legions I'll put in later, but just wanted to give you a sense, including tribute figures, of course, like one of the most famous 80s women characters, center of a line, She-Ra, done in this tribute to her, which is awesome. One of my favorite Legions figures. And then they even have builders, right? These are meant to be army builders. And they're just like, yeah, we've got to have women army builders as well. And absolutely, they're Legions fans who like build these. So they're definitely switching up and the game, I think, and changing the narrative on like, oh, they won't buy women figures. Like, I mean, they might not buy yours. Yeah, they might not buy yours, Todd. Or if you made them, they might. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, that's like a bit of a history lesson. It's like that's all of this even conversation really kind of kicked off because of Toy Biz. They made that first Storm figure for X-Men, and she was hideous. And they were like, she didn't sell. And we're like, yeah, because she's ugly. And of course, now Nostalgia Glasses makes it, Nostalgia Glasses made her, people have like more, fond feelings of her, but they refused to make after that. And then they went on record to, was it Wizard or Toy Fair at the time? But one of the magazines said, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And basically Brian Cunningham went back to the magazine and said, children, kids, readers, go spam them, tell them how wrong they are. And then 100%. And Toy Biz got the message. And then they were like 2 per wave going forward. Like they started just pumping them out, and we got a real catch up for a while there. So
some Four Horsemen. Some Four Horsemen details. They have 15 full-time employees, by the way. Like, it's a huge corporation. No. And then, of course, Ebony Leopard. I didn't forget. It's just, again, I love Mythic Legions. I love Cosmic Legions, but there's so many more to the indies. I just start there because I do think they're doing something unique, and they're definitely doing a lot of trailblazing. And yeah, Art saying I find myself buying mostly women figures. And you're definitely not alone in that. On that note, here's another indie, Loose Collector, or in partnership with Executive Replicas and other things. Dope Pinoy designer out and starting as a customizer, now designer of toys out in the Philippines. And that comes into play, as we'll see. But like for the longest time, all he was doing were women. Like, imagine that. I'm going to do a series of action figures, not even a series. I'm going to do one-off action figures of women characters across some of the more obscure comic book, TV show stuff that is super niche. And I mean, he's still doing it. So something must be working, unless he's just like wants to, I don't know, punishing himself financially. But
I'm kidding.
And they're really cool.
Market for it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about this figure. So La Muerta, I have not grabbed it, but you can kind of see like some of the folks who are are big toy collectors and known in the community are definitely checking these figures out. And the sculpts are great. They're a little smaller than the stuff. They scale really well with your kind of like Marvel Legends, almost like 1-to-1. Marvel Legends, but they're really cool. And for the most part, there's it's almost like he was really working to perfect this body type, and is now moved on to other things, is moving on to other things. But, so there's that, there's some other, the other characters that he's done in this most recent wave of sort of like, I think these might all be from the same comic book company. I'm not familiar at all. But
it's from the same era for sure, because like this was very something else that kind of sparked the female figure craze in the 90s was the bad girl craze, which was like Lady Death, She, Catwoman, all that, where all these like just anti-hero bad girls with this proportion of body, let's say. Totally. They all kind of came out at once. Like they were all just huge boobs and big guns. But I mean,
and I think
they came out with like indie toy companies even back then, and people were buying strictly that for the longest time.
That's right. And so yeah, RG's saying like it's part of this wave that you're seeing here specifically from Dynamite Comics and Coffin Comics. I think La Muerta's from Coffin. Yeah, thank you, RG. Good looking out. And also Betty Page, right? Of course, the Betty Page was packed in particularly from the Rocketeer, like her sort of the version of Betty Page in the Rocketeer comic. But hey, like that's pretty damn cool. Again, definitely. What's that?
Oh, you never thought you'd get that before, so
Yeah, yes, maybe not an action figure, but yes, I think there's definitely a cheesecake quality, as you're sort of saying, right? Especially in the 90s, it was like the bad girl thing, and of course, that the 90s was what brought us in comic books the swimsuit issues of like these superheroes, men and women.
Love them.
Right?
I love
and
them.
They continue. The Street Fighter one, the latest Street Fighter one just came out. It's become a thing. And I digress, but yeah. So here's some of the previous sort of comic book wave. I remember these growing up, like going to the comic book store, and of course Vampirella's like much older, but and so was Red Sonja, but like the Purgatory, the She's, what was the one? I don't know. Have they done Witchblade? I feel like if not, that's got to be coming soon.
I feel like there's again one of those like sort of smaller companies back in the like mid 90s. I think they might have done one.
Okay, but I meant specifically like Loose Collector. Like I feel like if he hasn't tried, I'd be super surprised.
100%. Like, although she's got a relaunched comic now, so wouldn't be surprised if they tried to like push out some merch at the same time.
And on top of the women thing, Rarity, right? So this is Trece, which actually did get a little bit of attention because it got turned into a Netflix show, and that was doing well. It's still there, but it's basically, if you consider something like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer set in Manila, in the Philippines, with like our mythology and folklore, our character, our creatures and stuff, and she goes around sort of hunting them, and her name's Trece. And again, like it's because I think we're in this place where a lot of people are making toys, and maybe people are trying to stand out from the crowd. That might lend itself a little bit to the attention on women, and then also the attention on women that really don't get a whole lot of like spotlight and attention, like this obscure comic book that became a Netflix series got this. And on top of that, like in the Philippines, there was this show Darna, who's like truly like like is up there with your Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, of course, and easily Wonder Woman, Superman, for people in the Philippines of a particular generation, right? Like, and there's been modern versions of it, but this character has been around for decades, and finally they've gotten like this cool posable action figure that Loose Collector did quite a bit ago. So
yeah, there's also it's so funny. I remember I forget his name, the guy from N.E.W.S, the founder of that. He was sort of talking, people were saying like, oh, why did you do these licenses? Why are you doing these toy lines? And he's like, well, it's the only ones we could get, to be honest. So there is that. And that's the thing too, you get these like sort of smaller companies, whether it's like legal or not. They do lead with characters like this, where it's like something you haven't gotten before. So if there is a fan base, you'll find out about it real quick.
Yeah, I missed out on this character. I could probably, it wouldn't be cheap, but just kind of cool that it's being done. Again, they scale a little small for me. The first thing that perked my ears up that they did was the heavy metal Tarna. Is that her name?
Yeah.
Figure. Yeah. And that didn't quite, like the QC on those were a little wonky for sure. But, as time has gone on, these figures just keep getting better and better. This is like an earlier figure compared to like that La Muerta figure. Night and day as far as what I've seen in terms of the build and quality. So,
well, that's kind of the real shocking thing about now and the future kind of thing. Not to get too, woo-woo about it, but like a couple years ago, and even like 3D modeling, like when there were customizers, when there were 3D modelers, and people were starting to do like trying to almost mass produce figures. Like they weren't great, they weren't spectacular, but I mean now anything you get from 5K Toys, anything you get from Stan Solo, anything you get from people who aren't or third party, I guess is really what the term in Transformers land is called. I mean it's real good. They're made in factories.
Yep.
The paint is impeccable.
Yep.
It's getting to the big dogs quality. So I think we're kind of like arrived at this place where like maybe we don't need you, Hasbro.
Awkward. We'll get to them because they've I will say they're doing better, 100% better. But I hear you. Obviously, like I'm a little bit of a stand for indie toys, but as folks said, they've improved a lot since Tarna. And then what else? There was something else that came out here. Oh yeah, this. And that's the other thing is like it spreads a lot of awareness about characters, but then it can go beyond that. And 100%, like you'll learn a lot about Filipino lore from Trece. Art, are you Filipino? I forget you. I assumed you were, and if not, man, just talk to your parents or aunties and uncles. I'm sure they've got some ghost stories and creature stories for you because I've got some good ones. Okay. Are you talking about Brian Volk Weiss?
Yes,
from N.E.W.S. And so people have brought up some of the N.E.W.S stuff, sure. Why? You want to tell him to take his name out of? Never mind.
Get your name out of your mouth.
And speaking of that, slap that like, y'all. Thank you, Nick. Perfect timing. Well done. Okay. Before we move on, let me take a little bit of a break. I've been trying to show this, but I'm going to actually share a video of something that came out not too long ago, but I never got to talk enough about it. So we want to talk women and females. How about this? I don't know what to say about the music. But this was a post from it was reposted by 5K Toys because this is a toy that they're selling. This is part of the Sexy Ice collection. That's the name of their brand, Sexy Ice, from their Vermin line. So Sexy Ice is the company, Vermin is the line. But what I wanted to show is one, obviously it's a dope like woman insectoid alien thing, but look at the way this thing moves. So that's the other piece. I hear a lot of people say like, oh, there's some limitations because there's a thinner body and like there's only so much we can do. So that's why it's really hard to make women figures. It just takes a lot of extra work, or it's just really hard. They won't stand up. That's just a thing that happens because they're so slim and all of these things. And no, like I feel like we're in a different time. Like you're right. Those are things to cite as obstacles. And hey, growth mindset. Then how do we solve that problem in engineering and technology and materials? Woo, 5050. To do 50 in Canada. I don't know, but
it's in my gated community. What's happening here?
I was going to say, never mind. I was about to make an ignorant mounted police joke, but I still did it anyways. But look at
my horseback.
What you were about to say something about this.
Well, I mean, I always sort of do like a 1-for-1 kind of when I hear stuff like that, where it's like, oh, they don't stand, they're don't have much articulation. You're like, pick up that Juggernaut, pick up that Colossus, pick up that blob figure. Tell me how many great poses you're going to get at them either. It's like there's limitations to certain things, but I mean, like you look at something like this, or even what Marvel Legends is doing with Black Widow, Phoenix, Miss Marvel. There's ways around it. There's ways to improve, and I mean, this here is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I think this thing is wild. I look at like this forward thing that I know a lot of people ask for because of swords, but then they're like, but this bug does yoga, so she can do that back here too, which I can't. Right? Just some really cool stuff. And then of course, like building in, like making these characters super cool, like at least from my perspective, in terms of just like the all the accessories are not like we're not going to skimp on accessories, deco. Obviously it's a different market than a retail domestic thing, but like there's a lot going on with this figure. It's definitely something that I can't wait to have in hand because it looks like it's proverbial hand candy. But I should post that link here. You go, enjoy. But I think it's cool. And again, it's from a it's from an overseas company that is has not done a lot of toys that we know of, meaning like sometimes they'll release things, change names or whatever, but something to look out for. Okay, that said, why don't I talk about something I actually know something a little bit about? There's this line called Animal Wars of the Kingdom. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but allow me to mansplain to you Animal Wars of the Kingdom. No, so and admittedly, like I love this line, but it took them. It's gonna take them what, like 4 or 5. Sorry, I'm losing count at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I think waves of figures to get to the women buck. And I know, yeah, it's expensive. It's like if you figure they've reused that initial buck a couple of times and they figured out the logistics of it or the engineering of it, and they've really dialed that in. I get why you might want to go like, well, let's just keep making these and keep making this thing that we know even better, versus, hey, let's start from the ground up and redesign like a brand new type of figure. And I appreciate that now among the indies in particular. And I think audience, what do you call it, audience or customer base, there's now more of a clamor for it. Like, hey, give us something different, give us something new, which I think is healthy. And so we are getting the new women buck. Anyway, people have heard me talk about Animal Wars of the Kingdom. Anything that you cared to say, or we can move on as well?
I mean, my MO. I'm all like, where the ladies at?
Yeah.
I got to see that pretty early or I'm going to be mad. I mean, we talk
Where
about
are the
Ghostbusters
animals?
later. But,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's the other, if you're not Hasbro, I have a little more patience for that, just because, I mean, like you do have to kind of, build the funds, frankly, build the bucks, build the funds to actually get to the stage. So there is a little more leeway in that regard.
Yep. Yeah, well, not again. But yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe I hope so. I'm hoping for it. Trying to help where I can with it. But yes, these are cool. But like, yeah, whatever. We've talked too much about that AWOC thing here. And I'm going to zoom a little bit more quickly. Frazetta Girls have been releasing their figures based on their grandfather's legacy and their artwork. And they've so far done one figure that's been in people's hands, and that's Dark Wolf. And from that same Fire and Ice series, as well as Ralph Bakshi film, they've released, oh my God, I'm totally blanking. What is her name? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to read. It's Tigra. I totally knew it was Tigra. Fake fan. Yes. Tigra. This is her. And so I think these are in people's hands. I'm not sure. It's not on my shelf at the moment.
Or soon. I think they did a pre-order for animation style Dark Wolf, which I didn't know there was a difference, but that said, yeah, likewise. I watch this movie at least once a year. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very aware of what she wore in the movie.
Yeah.
And in the figure, but it's for some reason when you see it in 3D plastic, it's suddenly really, I mean, very apparently because
you blush a little.
That's a lot of a lot.
Yeah.
A little of a little.
It's true. It's true. And it, it's from a particular era and genre, frankly, where they're naked. I mean, and they've got there's a moment where she's got this like lacy cover up thingy, or silky, I should say.
Casually
and
around the house.
See, it's not just for
like
the mermen.
I mean, if I look like that, you would not be able to get clothes on me either. So
fair enough. It's the see the mermen aren't the only ones that get the nipples. So I think that's pretty cool, and I'm glad that, of course, how awkward would it be if they did a Fire and Ice thing and then like make a bunch of the men and then never release her, which is that MIA 80s like MO, right? Like
pretty quick.
Yeah. So
you had one job.
Yeah, totally. Moving quickly, Creative Beast Studio, again, another great indie company that I love, but they have the Cyberzoic line that's coming up. It's the first time where they're actually working in humans. And they're usually doing doing dinosaurs and so now they are venturing into human bucks, and they absolutely are making sure that women are part of that very first wave. Definitely that little bit of, I know it can't be helped, the Dino Riders sort of homage. And oops, this is what the prototypes are looking for that. She's currently on pre-order. Woo! But that's for both the Smilodon and her. And these are smaller. So, cross scales, it's not like just a 112, 110 thing. She's like a 3.9 inch figure on that, larger Smilodon to kind of get that Dino Riders vibe. And there are more on the way. You can buy her separately. And
there was another woman I thought in that line, and she was very apparently like a Dino Riders Serena homage with like the red and the blue armor.
yes, so
It's not
that
even
is more of
subtle.
that was like a Kickstarter exclusive reward tier, and it was a different colorway. It was just like a different repaint in those colorways. I'm not sure if the figure had any differences either. It might have. Here's another one that's coming in the future, so it's not going to stop there. Again, like shout out to the indies who recognize that there has been a gap in the toy market, and they're not going to let it continue. And of course, I could we could go on and on with the indies because there's so many. Like Valaverse did a whole here's a bunch of like a whole wave of women. Zezre Studios did the same thing. A whole wave of women developed their book, and so. Not at all trying to ignore people. It's just, so many things to cover. And of course, here we land on Delta 17 with Kestrel. There are two figures in there, 3.75. I don't know. Is it actually 3.75? I haven't taken a ruler to it. But that format, O-ring, old school throwback line, which is very, very cool.
Yep.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say Adam wanted to make sure he came in with the actually that it is true that it is a Dino Riders unique figure in that style, as you were saying.
Yeah. This line, I mean, just on its own, the concept, and again too, we're seeing that with over at Hasbro with Ghostbusters and Super 7 with G.I. Joe itself again, like the O-ring sort of making a bit of a comeback, not unlike the He-Man buck is sort of being used for Dragon Ore and some other things. So it's just a fun time, especially for these indie things where it's it's a new property. You can sort of blend it in with your other figures, or you can sort of just go hard in on what is happening outside.
We're waiting for you. Hear a bang on the door. Do, 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 do.
I didn't commit any crimes. I don't know what you're talking about, officer. Not today, anyway. But yeah, that you can get these. You can really go in on the lore of the property, because I mean they are working on that simultaneously as well. So that's what we did. The early '80s, there was no remakes necessarily. Everything was brand new. He-Man notoriously had 17 different origins until they kind of landed on one.
Yep. This is per your comment earlier when you're talking about Death Sparrow. Folks are even kind of using her as a stand-in for the October Guard and the old G.I. Joe thing, and that's another thing that's sort of happening, is where people are getting these figures and kind of working them into their classic lines. A lot of great stuff. So Ken wants to know, sorry, which figure is that and how do I get it? How much is it? And people are still buying O-rings, huh? Yeah, no. So check it out, Ken. Don't know if you realize, but yeah, there's a whole brand new several series of O-ring resurgent figures, and this is one of them. It's called Delta. Sorry, no, I've done too much mansplaining already. Ken, you're just gonna have to do some Googling and figure it out. But yes, shout out to Ken, who is part of the Delta 17 team making these figures a reality. And while we're at it, shout out to John Emerald Knight for this awesome photo. Well done. But yeah, it's cool. And I think that's kind of all I have for the indies. Before we move on to kind of how people are holding up the brands that we love from the 80s, any other thoughts on the sort of indie women and indie toy lines kind of vibe?
I just think it's always very telling that they generally do, not to put shame on you, but they generally lead with the women. I mean, much like this, or or what Loose Collector's doing kind of thing. I mean, they really do know what the fan base wants. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I continue to dunk on Todd, but I mean, you go on any damn stream. There's probably two
No, it's
tonight. That's
easy.
if
Sorry, you
anybody
don't have
mentions
to dunk on
superpowers.
Todd. He did it to himself. We know this. He's been vocal.
Well, yeah, but
Go ahead.
anybody mentions superpowers, and they're like, there's a million things you actually could complain about superpowers. You're like, hey, you have one black guy, but like, or actually two technically, but everyone, every time, women.
Yeah,
Like, and it's like, and he knows this. So, yeah, you go to the indies, and they're like, here you go, no questions asked, no problem.
Yeah. 100%. I don't know. I appreciate it, and I'm glad that that's actually how these companies have started. And again, I started with the Four Horsemen for a reason, because I think in many ways they are modeling for a lot of what can be done in that smaller toy market. So anyways, okay, let's move on to the sort of people who are still holding these classic IP. Let's start with G.I. Joe, which, in fairness, I got to say, G.I. Joe, when I was growing up, was one of the better ones. And it's obviously relative, because still I can count on one hand, how many women characters there were in all of my G.I. Joe collection as a kid, just because what was available. But still, really early on, first wave, we got Scarlet. Questionable head sculpt, but we got Scarlet. So
we got better. Version 2, the head's better, the body's horrible.
That tradition continues, and they upped it for sure. And they're always finding ways to like work in new women characters into Joe, both Joe and Cobra. And sometimes it angers some fans but like, this is at first this is from shout out to Action Figure 411 for their awesome like visual guides and checklists for a bunch of different lines. That's what I'm using here. But right from the beginning, of course, Scarlet was there, and then pretty quickly we got Baroness, one of the first to get a vehicle.
Target exclusive.
Yeah, sorry about that end of things, but like, that's 100%. Then we got, the movies came out, and I don't care what people say about the movies, but this is actually one of now one of 4 classified figures that I own. I love this Baroness. So let's see. I'm just like getting a little triggered, but it's fire. Okay.
It's fine. I'm just waiting. My dog's right beside me, and I'm waiting for him to like just start screaming at it. I'm like, great.
But yeah, I just shout out to Joe and the classified team for making sure that that's a thing that's a reality. And of course, even now we're learning as we're in this 21st century mode of getting to know more and more who the people are behind the lines. We're also seeing women sort of in control of the lines to a certain extent and playing a part in the creation of these things. So,
I mean, Emily went from, people sort of like dogged on her early on, but now she's kind of become like the patron saint of Hasbro. So
amen.
Like everyone knows Emily's name now.
Yep. So it's funny. Yeah, it is funny though. You do see some of those like tactics that kind of work with women do kind of end up getting paired with things like the dragonfly, which I understand it completely. There's I do understand the market realities of why they got to do some of these things. I also understand it for some of these bigger things. That's where the indies have a little bit of flexibility. Where I think with something like this, people have an expectation, and when they're not getting what they want, they can get real angry, real ornery, real loud. And so I remember Glenda in particular, when that came in, man, some of the fun.
People don't know their G.I. Joe history, and I was like, "What is y'all's problem?"
Right, but
Scarlet's been repainted 1,000 times over the globe, so deal with it.
Hey, John. So that's Joe. Any thoughts on Joe and the ladies? Are they making up for lost time?
I think they've made, I guess, a few Scarlets now. The first 2 were hate crimes and personal attacks, and I'm glad they finally course corrected that with the retro thing. That first, oh my god, I hated her so much. Like, you don't have a character whose name and main feature is her red hair, and then smatter like 17 other colors on top of her just to like distract from it. I hated them so much.
Yeah.
But the new one's great. Even this one actually went up here is pretty good. They are, I think they've pretty much hit their limit with uh vintage. They haven't done Ninja Force Scarlet, and they
Right.
did Helix. They're sort of, they're kind of blowing through rather quickly, like their cast. So we're looking at Pythona, we're looking at Raven, we're looking at some other like more, or Doc, even like the first, like what was going to be the first black female
Yeah.
G.I. Joe.
Mhm.
Um so I think it's actually now is the exciting time where we can sort of get into like the weird stuff, not just Glenda, but some other new characters.
Agreed. Agreed. And this is the other. If folks
Mm.
are wondering, she's sitting here as the other. My newest classified pickup. I get random things. Actually, getting a road pig. But anyway, so shout out to Joe's. Keep doing what you're doing. Let me put this link in the chat. And hey, you might want to check out a Glenda video over on Toy Connections. How about Motu?
Yeah.
Masters of the Universe. What have you noticed about how they've been handling? Oh, this is Masterverse. I should do Origins as well. My bad. But
Yeah.
what are you noticing? Observations about how they've handled women in Masters of the Universe?
So speaking on a strictly selfish level, I have been wanting them to do Lady Slither so I could sneak it into my classics collection because they never got around to her, but they've
Mhm.
not done that yet. So mad about it. I was also like, I think I posted on Instagram a few days before Comic Con. I'm all like, here's some like perfectly reasonable asks for some reveals for He-Man, and one was Queen Marlena. In
Mhm.
anything, in
Seriously.
anything. But I mean, especially Origins. She had the wrong look, but she was teased on the back of one package in her snake armor look from season 2 of 2000X.
Mhm.
I think everyone would prefer the green dress, but we've had one with classics, but that was one figure. I was talking about hate crimes. I was super mad about that at the end of the con. But that said, I mean, the Evelyn. Every time I'd watch a season of Revelation or whatever, I just see Tila and Evelyn get a new costume every episode. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm getting stressed out, but they've been keeping up pretty well. Like they've got a few to do still, but they went hard on that. They're like, costume change, more, go, get to the factory.
Yeah, and King Randor's getting a little lonely. So definitely, where is Marlena? It's a little bit odd. It's an odd omission. But yeah, I've just been sort of zooming in on the Origins women that have shown up. So they're there, and in a way, and
Shira.
in a frequency that's definitely higher than what was happening uh, with the vintage lines.
Yep.
Masterverse as well. And we're getting, new versions, or with Masterverse in particular, we're getting things that we just never got in general, like motion picture.
Yep.
Evelyn, there's a bunch here. I don't know why they started with that, but yeah. But it's largely still, there's no Marlena here. It's basically Tila and the Sorceress. And then we got one Andra.
We got, yeah, we got
And of
Evelyn
course,
coming
Shira.
now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shira,
I
Katra,
do.
Frosta,
Frosta,
and
weirdly
Shadowgate.
enough, and Frost is the next in Origins, according to Toy Habits. So
Okay.
she's my fave, so that's great. Yeah, Shira was also like, I mean, Katra were at Comic Con in the cartoon collection. It was lovely to see them, but again, with the
Yes.
anniversary looming. Also, I mean, I think we all need to bear in mind that Comic Con and Toy Fair, to a lesser extent, New York, were the big, you know, show everything for the year kind of shows, and now that's just not the
Mhm.
case. I mean, like they have to
Yeah.
sort of hold back a lot of stuff for live streams, for random cons they attend. So I think
Yep.
my expectations of Comic-Con need to be measured better. They did show a lot, just not what I selfishly wanted.
They've definitely made the largest character thus far in Masterverse is a woman character.
Mhm.
Motherboard. I love this Evelyn. This Batlyn's fantastic. Yeah, and then they've explored different body types as well with that one Evelyn.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't even know where she was, but
Bufflin.
at least here she is. Yeah, Bufflin. So yeah, Masters of the Universe definitely I feel like it's just a completely different approach. Obviously, we're in a different place as a world, and our sort of cultural beliefs around like accepting more women in different roles, being very present in the conversation. So that's part of it. But also, I think it would be really odd if these companies who are holding these IPs didn't do it. and you've
Yeah.
got the indies kind of like doing their thing, or the customizers, which we're about to get to. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, even He-Man specifically. I mean, like the three, Marlena aside, the three women leads were integral to like every
yep.
story, to the plot, to the future, like everything. So I mean, like it's kind of nice to see that Mattel recognizes that like there's money here. Not so much to do, don't do the right thing, but like there's money here. So get that cheddar.
Exactly. You're leaving it on the table, as people say. Star Wars. Okay. And so even Black Series from way it started way back in 2013. Again, gotta give credit where credit's due. They knew what was up, and it's Star Wars. Like it's a different fan base where they know like where the gaps are, and they're like, hey, so pretty early on, they gave us this Princess Leia in the parenthetical slave outfit, Hut Slayer Leia there. But then it's like takes a while. And of course, it's funny because they're limited by what was existing. This was 2013. The ownership was still in Lucas's hands. And so there were a couple of key main characters they could do, of course, Leia, Padme. And then, oh no, actually 2013, that might not be right. But anyway, then the movie comes out, 15 to 18, we get, of course, Rey, and then we're getting, more and more, they start to warm up to the idea. We got Jyn Erso, yes. So like there's stuff there. It's definitely different than when I was a kid collecting Star Wars.
Yep.
It's like
it's not unusual to see it. It's not a surprise to see it. You're sort of like, I mean, yeah, like with Jyn Erso, you're like, if she's not there, there'd be riots in the streets. Like,
yeah.
and it's the being, like, I mean, Hera, like, the funny thing with Star Wars too is that like it kind of started strong with, focusing on original trilogy and sort of kind of starting to veer into prequel, but then the Disney buyout, and there's this constant like tug where they're like, we have new stuff coming, you need to like, keep on like making the new stuff. The new stuff that Disney's making money off of. And so there's that constant, but I mean, like to this day, and I mean, they're not like exciting characters, but we've not seen Mon Mothma, we've not seen Emperor, we've not seen.
It's true.
Much of anybody, and there's like Snoodles. There's not a lot of women in Star Wars, but of them,
Laptinek. Yeah, totally. I'm sorry, that was my Laptinek moment. But they've got a funny like all these nostalgia brands, they've got to juggle different fans as well, right? So it's like, how do we keep the people who are falling into new stuff, and then as well as please the people who have been around and are missing? They want them on Mothma. They want to, third
Ula,
alien from the left, or Ula, right? And the dancers, but I will say, post Disney era, even as I'm zooming in, we are getting a lot more like women characters, period, to even make figures of that are front and center in the action, right? Which is a cool thing, which then just creates, or we're getting Jaina Solo, right? Like figures
and
like
Jade. I bought that one. Like I was so excited for that figure.
And so it's an interesting time. I feel like, Star Wars obviously is having a rough go of it at the moment. But on that note, I will say, like, even with the Acolyte, again, in this conversation of women, like they gave us Osha, they gave us May, they gave us Jackie to potentially make figures of, and they did Master and Dara, right? So like right from the get, and I know like obviously the chatter out there, people like don't like even just the concept of a bunch of women being present in a Star Wars project, because to them it's suspect of some conspiracy, yada yada. But
it's also telling that it's always the Black women who really get the bulk of this. Like there's two things can be true at once.
The Canadian said that, folks. But no, it's 100% true. No, it's you're 100%. I'm with you.
I mean, you think of like what was her name? God, I forgot her name. The main villain from Obi-Wan. Reva.
Oh, Reva. Yes. Yeah. Same thing. 100%. But also, well, yeah, here she is, Reva. Yeah, and I also
I loved her character. Like she was fantastic. Like once you actually watch the show front to back, I'm like, What's the problem?
Every character that I've shown you, I have like been especially in love with, whether it was Jyn Erso, Asajj Ventress from Clone Wars. Like, I just think they're fantastic characters. Hera is like one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, period. L3, who's a part of the Millennium Falcon, no matter what you say, the droid, like, it was just really cool. And again, it gives us something new and interesting in the entertainment. But now we're getting opportunities. Unfortunately, Black Series is gone. I'm not going to show Vintage Collection just because of time, but we're getting stuff. That's the trippy thing. It's like, okay, I do feel like has been some course correction. So Thundercats, ho! And on that note, Super 7 obviously has the Thundercats line, and they were real good about like your whole thing on MIA is like, hey, you didn't finish the team, and that was very common back in the day. But like, LJN did actually a decent job of finishing the team, so not going to take that away from them. And obviously Super 7 followed suit. It took them a little bit longer to finally do that. I think that's more of a marketing thing, trying to make sure that people continue to buy the line regardless of finishing the team, which is, I know, frustrating for a lot of folks. But then they also gave us stuff like this, like, like,
well, it's like, I mean, there was quite a few characters that I never expected LJN to get to, but I mean, there was a lot of characters who were sort of, friends of the Thundercats or villains or what have you. And like, this was, I mean, it's not like I was ever clamoring for Amandora. Like, she had the same voice as Chitara with that like low gravelly voice, but fun to see her. Like, fun to see. Was it Willa? There's two of them.
Yeah, it's
and again, I have no doubt the other one will be made too. Like her friend who's not a lesbian.
I don't remember. You said who's not or is now?
Probably is now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but
we're good friends.
Little column A, little column B. We've got Chitara going on. We've got Pumaira, and it's really cool to see, because like, I think when people are fans of this property, they're fans of Thundercats. So give them all the Thundercats, right?
Yeah.
And I love that they do that. And Super 7's particularly good at doing that, because they are interested in really going as far as they can with characters.
Too good, because I did my Lunatax video maybe a month or two ago, and I said Chilla was shipping now, and like usually I sort of gave like a little recap at the end of the video of like what's what. And I'm like, I'm sure they'll do Luna soon. 3 days later, Brian Flynn says like, oh, here's Luna. And like, it's as if Brian came to my house, punched me in the face, kicked my dog, and I was like, he's like, your video's trash. It's out of date. And I'm like,
well, no,
how dare you?
From the Vintage, it's 100% accurate. And just so, they have G.I. Joe as well, and they're doing a real good job of trying to do that. They even tried to release an entire wave of women, but they were definitely odd variants and stuff, unique variants that
nobody likes the Deke cartoon. So no, that was just misfire. But this is the line I've been waiting for. Like, I did buy classics, and then they started making this, and I'm like, this is what I wanted. So I actually sold my classics collection in favor of this, because I'm like, I want like hardcore animation looks. And that Scarlet's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah. It's a great looking figure, the Scarlet. Anyway, there you go. Whoever, I forget who said that, but yes, Tiamat is in fact here. She was forgotten from the graphic. You're right on that. Who is not here? I'm just realizing is I totally skipped over Marvel Legends. Didn't mean to. I think I included some of them in the thumbnail, but like SDCC gave us Crystal, right? And I'm blank. Phoenix. That Phoenix was at least it wasn't announced, but it was physically there. Beautiful, with that cool Phoenix standee thingy. Yeah. There were a couple of others, not just Marvel Legends, right? We got Mafex doing a Jubilee. Like, there's no shortage of like Marvel.
Yeah, we've been like Mafex. I've been doing Mafex Batman Hush, and they banged through Harley, Catwoman, and Ivy very quickly before we even got they only showed Robin last week, and then in that same showroom they showed Batgirl, who's not really active during Batman Hush. I was kind of hoping they'd do Oracle, but nevertheless, I'm like, I'll always take a good.
I'll take it.
Batgirl.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that was it for the like, even in the modern era for the whether they're the non-indies or the major labels, if you will. And the folks who are keeping those brands of various sizes, they're definitely recognizing that, like, hey, we don't need to follow in the footsteps of the 80s toy companies and lines. We can actually give fans what's been missing. And it's smart. It's actually smart. You said it, leaving money on the table. They're going to make sure they get that money. So, okay.
And that's the thing too about like the money is that we've been clamoring for it. And
Yes.
adults are officially the majority buyers of toys now. So like, pony up.
Before we leave Super 7, see, it's confirmed. He will flip a table and shout, "Your video is done!" And you're not wrong on this at all. What's going on, John? No, they're definitely priced at their very high price point.
You have to cherry pick. You can't be all in like you can with some other lines.
And that's all I'll say about that at the moment, just because that's a whole conversation. I got this whole line so far. I plan on completing it, even the ones I don't want. And I'm assuming that was also around the G.I. Joe time. And then, yes.
Oh, Johnny.
Which Johnny?
Oh, Johnny Nostalgia asking about the Nick April O'Neil, who I got outrageously excited for at
oh my
Comic-Con.
God, thank you. No, I totally I screwed that up. But here, let me cheat and let me go and do something. But what were you going to say about her while I hunt for this?
I was like, that's the funny thing. There was so much great stuff at NECA, even like Granny April from Last Ronin coming, which I thought finally. But this one, I was like, they did it. Like I forget what I want to say, like Turtles number 5 or 6 from Mirage Comics, but this was sort of the racially ambiguous April that has long been sort of like, a big debate since, the late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. But I was so excited they went for this because April in Mirage has been kind of absent for at least 10 to 15 years. So this was like very welcome sight.
And I'm totally scrolling through their through NECA's thing to try and find pictures of her to replace this thumbnail that I've got from our episode. But I don't see her. I guess it wasn't in like the official shots yet. But like while we're on the NECA, I mean, come on, man. They're not even thinking about age either. They're just like, here, you need an Angela Lansbury as seen in Murder, She Wrote.
And I didn't know I did, but yeah.
I actually getting this
Golden
from my
Girls
mom.
line. Yeah.
I'm going to give it as my mama's every Sunday night, 8:00. That was her thing to switch off from. I couldn't watch Amazing Stories because she wanted to watch Murder, She Wrote. We get Elvira. Yeah, I mean, they're just like, they know what's up, and they're doing a good job of not ignoring the women in their lines and making sure they're a part. Of course, we've got Demona, we had Angela, but for some reason, I don't see that April here. But it is a big deal for that April to exist and to be acknowledged in plastic form. So I'm thrilled, and thank you, Johnny, for keeping me honest with my thumbnails. Otherwise, it'd be a bait and switch, and fans don't like baits and switches.
TMS, and you had to have April. And that's Mitch with Card saying like he's met with Judith Hogue. I mean, like that launch of the movie April figure was fantastic because they got in the actress who promoted on her social media and also worked with NECA. Smart. And like it was this huge like unveiling, and she worked closely about the costume. Like, like I mean, she's been just incredible. Just incredible through the whole process. So I mean, like, and that's and that's how it's done. Like
it is.
Attention, movie stars. That's how it's done.
It's 100% the way it's done. And I go back to like even when we started with Legions. Like that's the savvy of using what we can now with social media, of reaching out to people on a different level. That's the way to go, because you can activate a lot of like toy buyers and hardcore geeks in general in that way. If we continue to build like the community around it and the sense of what's familiar, feeling like things are special and done in ways that we weren't doing back then. And of course there's this, if you're an 80s child, this might have haunted.
Still scarred.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about the people who are filling in the ranks. Thank you for turning me on to this, and we'll close this up for our show. Let's end with looking at some customizers. When the companies, Todd, don't give us the women, Todd, Sometimes people need to step up and handle it. And in fairness, Kenner. So this is Enzo Man, who used to go by a different name. What was it?
His storefront used to be called like the Multiversity.
Okay.
It might still be. I'm not sure, but he does very kind of like small batches, whenever he feels like it, frankly. But when they go quick. So best to follow him.
Yep. And so we were talking about superpowers not long ago, and these are characters that like should have not necessarily in this form, or maybe actually it's close, should have existed in the original superpowers. But even now, post Justice League Unlimited, like why wouldn't we get Hawk Girl, right?
Mhm.
Or Hawk Woman, sorry, old school Hawk
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, a
Shayera.
generation who grew up on Justice League and Justice League
Mm-hmm.
Unlimited. So like they associate her and John Stewart, frankly, with the Justice League kind of thing. So like people are always kind of confused when they're not in movies, they're not in toy lines. They're like, but they're core members. We grew up with them.
Yep. And then and this is greedy, like of course
I
we're
want
not.
this.
I can't expect a company to go like, we're gonna give you the Storm Wonder Woman mashup from the Amalgam comics, but this is pretty dope. And this is what
Yeah.
customizers can do these days. Again, 21st century, people have different tool sets, people have internet reference like up the wazoo. And so we can get some of this stuff now.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think this is great. Are there any
Yeah.
particular figures? Oh, actually, let
Barda.
me go here.
I miss Barda. I actually got his Batgirl, which is amazing. If you follow Let's Toy, he uses that Batgirl quite a bit.
Okay.
You need to bear in mind too, these are, I want to say resin painted perfection, but they're held together by magnets. So like, so
Right.
the paint doesn't rub, because they're not manufactured in a factory.
Yeah.
So there's a price and there's a magnetism kind of component to it. So manage expectations accordingly.
It's funny. Then you put it next to the vintage, and it's like, just because it's modern, it looks a lot better, in my opinion. And then, of course, these are like hand painted. Well, the others were probably hand painted as well in a factory, but these are like this craft person really kind of like putting a lot of love and detail into this. This Barda looks fantastic, and it really does
Yeah.
give that. Let's take the Kirby designs and work them through the filter, the superpowers filter. So
Yeah, and it's like really smart eye for design too, because that Barda is the same height as Mr. Miracle, which doesn't
Mhm.
seem like it as she should. But I mean, like if you compare that to Kenner Wonder Woman, she was very short,
Yes,
compared to her
yes,
all the
yes.
other women in the line.
That's a whole other conversation too about how they approach women figures in terms of scale. And like I've told you, I want a big Barda. Like I want one to
Yeah,
tower some of these dudes in the shelf, because she
I want
is.
comparatively like a 7 foot tall woman. That's what I want.
We got the Huntress.
And that's why I keep saying too, like Todd. I mean, if he wants to play catch up, I mean, get a Birds of Prey 3-pack with Canary, Batgirl, Huntress, or do a Sirens 3-pack. Like just test the waters, make that money. Again, you're leaving money on the table with adult collectors, but like these would be, great options.
Yeah, at a certain point, you're just being obstinate, Todd. Come on, or like, or even worse, like making us wonder, like, like, which woman hurt
It's not
you?
like, yeah, it's not like rich people to be like mentally ill, but here we are.
Fair enough. That's fair. What's going on here? Look at that,
I was like,
Mexican Superman as a commission. I was like, oh, that's cool. Is this a Cliff Burton in superpowers form? Because that's not the same. Oh no, this is the reaction figure. Oh man, that is dope.
oh,
Okay, cool.
there's this Batgirl and Supergirl.
Yes.
They're really great. And I mean, like if Todd was a better person, just like pay this man to get these done. Like they just fit perfectly. And again, like there's been so many customizers over the year that would take the Wonder Woman figure and sort of like try to plus her up or slap some plaster on her and change a different character. But I mean, like it's good to have different body shapes beyond what was done originally.
Yep. Yeah, Allison, 100%. That should have come a lot earlier. And then, man,
Yep.
those amalgam ones would be wild. That's a
That's
tough
a pipe dream.
one. That's
It's a pipe dream.
But you get the Nubia, and then sure, people can go to town and make it into a Storm Wonder Woman easily. And just, Rick Jones is saying Tony Mac always has been mentally different. Yeah, no, definitely a unique
Yep.
visionary, that Todd.
And a Canadian, which is so embarrassing.
And I'm going to end the Enzo Man before we move on to the next customizer here, because I know they bugged me too as a kid, but I've come to embrace the Wonder Twins, and I think it'd be really cool to see them in the line. Weren't they planned? Were
They were supposed to be in wave 6, I want to say, maybe 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely in the mix, which I'm like, fine, like whatever.
No love for Gleek? Come on now.
Nope. No monkeys, no butts. Nope.
Okay, fair
Except
enough.
for Crypto, he's a good boy.
Raffaello Customs. Okay,
Mhm.
this stuff, man. Thank you for introducing me to this, because I am not at all familiar. But man, some of these are just amazing, and I haven't looked close enough to see what they're. Oh, it's a Marvel Legends.
Yep.
Base.
All Marvel Legends. His paint, I have his Emma Frost before they did the Astonishing Emma recently in Marvel Legends kind of thing. And the paint, I mean, like I wouldn't smash it against the ground or anything, but like the paint, I don't know what he does, but it is factory perfection. Like there's no rub, it's not gooey. Like some customizers might be coming. It's like you would swear this was made in a factory, and like there's a certain shine to it. There's a certain shape. Like it's gorgeous. All the stuff he does is gorgeous. I've got him doing Val Cooper for me for X Force for X Factor right now.
Nice. That's really cool.
That's the storm we wanted.
Val Cooper. Yeah, we'll get to the storms in here too. We've got this awesome Harley Quinn. I don't even know, what is this from, a particular look? Is this like later in the comics where they did
Probably
her
a
this
video
way?
game, maybe. I'm not sure.
Look at the
She's in
look at the paint on that thing. There's a gradation on that. That's beautiful. Whoa, didn't intend that. Sorry. Boring cis dudes. But yeah, no, it's look how cool that is. Yeah. Oh, if this figure existed, there's so many people who would. Well, one, it's
Oh yeah,
a DC figure on a good buck. Sorry, Chris, but but
Justice Harley, that makes sense.
Yeah, he really covers them all, and so I really appreciate this. Wow, look at that. That is like a costume we don't see often at all. That's
And
cool.
like the paint's shiny, like very metallic kind of thing. It's just he's easily my favorite. I've bought a few things of them. They're not cheap, I'm not gonna lie to you, but worth every penny.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point when you're doing these customs things, they're very, very, very different. It's a different ball game, right? Like you're almost like buying one-off, like bespoke art objects. Now with Enzo Man does them, and he like mass produces them. I put that in air quotes. But like he produces a bunch of them. Do you know, does this guy do them in a much smaller quantity, kind of a thing?
It's one by one. Like you,
Okay,
and
so
you order,
like,
and then you're gonna wait. Like you're gonna wait because like this, I don't know what specifically he does with the airbrush, but it does take a long time to dry between each coat, and there are many coats. So
sure, that makes
if you wait
sense.
a year or two, buckle up.
Man, for all of you who have been waiting for a good Hawk and Dove, here's a beautiful one. Look at that custom. Do you have a sense of how much he charges for something like this?
Currently, no.
Okay, no problem.
Because funnily enough, I what happened with Val Cooper is that like I think I ordered his Gene, and then not 6 months later, like Hasbro's like, here's your Gene. I'm like, fine, let me do a Storm. They're like, here's your Storm. I'm like, listen, let's just do Val Cooper because they're not going to make her. And he's like, okay. So I kept on changing my mind, and so my custom's been pushed out a long time now. So I'm like, get to it when you get to it. It's fine. But I've also thought about this one too.
Oh man, I love the Psylocke outfits prior to like the Outback. When she finally actually had a costume, I wasn't crazy into her like genie looking costume.
Yeah, the puppy sleeves.
Yeah, but
this is the favorite.
Yeah, this was really cool. It's all like a night chainmail too. I remember at one point one variation of this costume.
Well, I mean, the other figure that just came out, it's definitely this. So we'll see.
That's true. They could reuse, and oh man, this is definitely of its era. I'm really surprised they haven't done this yet, especially with that big old this cloak thing. Is just, I remember it's a little silly but cool looking. It makes
But it's
sense
also
for.
like it's just before the Jim Lee relaunch kind of thing. But it's
Mhm,
funny
mhm.
where he had like or I want to say like maybe like Mark Silvestri kind of style, but she had the kind of
Yep.
like shaved
Yep.
head. And I'm not sure if that was his art style or if she actually shaved it, but it was like it was a choice.
Yeah, sometimes it was an interesting thing. You're like, did they intend that, or the colorist color it a particular way?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
clearly, like, does he seems to really focus Raffaello on women characters. Is this a
yeah.
have you is that just because of the gaps in what has been made, maybe, or is that just a
Very likely,
preference
but I
he
mean, he's
has?
also very good at it. Like he's good with hair, he's good
Mhm,
with paint, he's good with
mhm,
faces. So like I've seen him
mhm.
do some men like yeah, Namor there, but I mean like predominantly he's filling in gaps of figures we don't have and don't expect. I mean, this is a great costume. I don't expect Hasbro to make this anytime soon.
That is awesome. Yeah. What'd you expect? Black leather? Oh, and here we go. We'll close it off Raffaello out before looking at the last customizer with an awesome X23.
Mhm.
There's a chance that this could show up for reasons sometime soon in Marvel Legends, and I'll leave it at that. Let's move on to the last customizer, Nerde Bigode, which I'm assuming is that Italian or Portuguese, but like nerd mustache or bigote. Yeah,
I'm gonna say Portuguese. He is
Portuguese.
out
Yeah.
of what's
Brazil.
he
Yeah,
happen?
there's that.
Yeah, Brazil.
Yes, so our Motu, our Thundercats, I've seen this person's work before. I absolutely love it. But here you go. This is the hot
Got my
ticket
queen.
character that simply for whatever reason Mattel has just not done.
Yeah, he does 3D printing, and but what he does is that he sands it down so much that like you would never know. It's quite shocking because I mean I've had a few 3D printed things in the past, and I'm like not in love with it. But I got
Yeah.
his Burbles and I got his Crystal Castle, which was huge. It came in a practically a refrigerator box, but beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that face is really cool. Do you know did you sorry, I know you said you saw some of the stuff 3D print. So is it kind of like some of it's 3D print, some of it's something else?
I think it's all 3D printed. I
Okay.
know for Queen Marlena, he does have interchangeable like torso. So he
Mhm.
has have like a cloth skirt piece because he also does the thrones from Filmation. He makes those, so you can get those big purple spiky thrones that the king and queen can sit on.
Look at that. Love
He
it.
has little Whispering Woods Dio. Like it's just great.
And it's articulated. At first I thought, well, maybe not the legs. Maybe it's not. Maybe just the arms. I don't know.
I think the arms might be yeah.
Okay. Let's see. And of course we've got purple, but just to sort of stick to be consistent with the theme, were there other women characters that he did? Although this was one of the
I think
things that caught my eye for sure.
mhm.
Um, but I don't know.
The Crystal Castle. That's what I got in the middle
Oh
there.
yes.
It's huge, but it's
Yeah.
as a classics collector, it really fits in beside the classics Grayskull and Snake Mountain here.
And again, filling in those holes that simply like they just need to go back to this and give us a couple of these very classic play sets or classic, even, you know, the corner of one or like the spire of one would be amazing.
Yeah, even
Um,
just like and even just for photographers, like just have that Dio.
yeah, man, I love it. And I appreciate these customizers for doing their thing. And yeah, fantastic. And you know what else I appreciate? I appreciate you, Andrew. I love what you're doing with the with the whole MIA 80s ladies thing, as Allison said so profoundly earlier about just like it's one of her favorite toy tube kind of thing happening right now on YouTube in general. So I think you're doing something like super unique. Clearly there's plenty to talk about just on what we spent like 2 hours talking about.
Yeah,
um Women, like, now we weren't even talking about what you're covering, which is like the history of like, hey, what's missing, who did it or who didn't do it.
yep,
And then you also go into like looks and stuff, which is great. Like with the Janine one, more recently, you did kind of talk about what was released, but then what was sort of missing as well, and just
yeah.
really
She was
well
really
researched.
my cheat video because I wanted to do Janine. She was never
Mhm.
done right, and then she kind of started a trend of like we got like Elisa Mazza, we got
Yeah.
Charlie from Biker Mice from Mars, we got some other Batgirl from animated series. Like we got them eventually, but they were wrong. So Janine started all that.
Yeah, and I think it's really good. I'm curious. Are you like, because you said this is pretty much what I'm doing. You've got about 100. You've on your list so far, but you've got 33. Are there other things that you think you might want to do eventually on your channel?
Yeah, there's some other oddities I'm sort of playing with. Like, it's almost twofold for G.I. Joe. One is like the women of G.I. Joe weren't allowed handguns or practical weapons. Like, I think Baroness had a laser pistol. That's probably the closest thing, but everyone else had something ludicrous. Likewise, in the Scarlet vein, we'll talk about crossbows of the 80s. Everybody had a crossbow. Every
That's
team had a
true.
crossbow.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, very popular. It made me want a crossbow, and I was like, I don't know what I would do with it now, but I kind of want one.
They even did that. There was like a 90s show. It was this is totally dorky, but it was the woman who was in those Clear Silk commercials. I just remember her because a friend had a crush on her. Big red curly hair, but she had a crossbow. Like that was her weapon, and everyone's walking around with swords and stuff, and she's got the crossbow.
Oh,
Anyway.
I think I know. I can't. I think it's like some Gaelic word. I forgot the name of it, but yeah. I know what you're
Linda
talking about.
Blair and Savage Streets had a crossbow. So there you go. I'm curious. Do you do intense research, or like what's your process like to get those together?
Yeah, because it's like the best part too is I don't really script them. I sort of like have it all in my head, and then I kind of sit down and just go. Bleh. So you'll see a lot of ums and but I've been kind of obsessed with this for years. And I mean, speaking of Allison, I mean, I was doing this on my Instagram for a little while, and then she and some other people were saying like, you need to get this on Instagram because there's something here. It's very niche, but it's like something no one's doing. But yeah, I mean, I would sort of, get wine drunk on a Thursday night and be like, whatever happened to that girl? And just go down this like rabbit hole and a lot of dead ends. There's a lot of people who would sort of say like, this is why, but there's no sources. There's no backup information to that. So like there was a lot of speculation, and a lot of it's just classic sexism. But I've worked in corporations since the 90s, so I can, I've got a pretty good idea of what happened in the 80s too. So you can fill in some blanks sometimes.
Yeah, no,
especially
100%.
if it's a company.
I think it's great stuff, and people should definitely head over to Gayties Toys. The link is in the chat, but also make sure, again, over on that URL that's skirting across the screen right now, that'll be there, as well as the QR code if you're on the replay and want to shoot that real quick. Thank you for indulging me in definitely talking about what was missing in the 80s, but then talking about like where we at, right? Like, and I think at least, well, let me ask you, what do you think we're at before I get to me? What's your assessment based on us looking at how those sort of three areas, the indies, the keepers of those big IPs, and the customizers? Like,
I think we're in the most fascinating time right now because we're at kind of like a saturation of the big brands between the He-Mans, the Star Warses, the whatever. So like we've had multiple lines of each. You can sort of take your pick. There's, Ninja Turtles, pick your company, you can buy, whatever for them. I think where we see with Toxic Crusader, with Cops and Crooks, with people kind of like, just rumblings about visionaries and stuff like that. Like just these weird one-off things. And also getting into the 90s too. Like there's sort of room to play in that area. And also at the same time, there's this intersection of us, this sort of micro generation, they call it sort of like Zennials, where it's a bit of Gen X and a bit of Millennials. We're going to eventually grow out of this. I don't know when. I don't plan to anytime soon, but there is a certain there is a point perhaps in our futures when we're 60, 70 maybe, or we just die off. There's that too. But I mean, like, there's going to be a very harsh reckoning when that happens.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Let's end on a bright note with our death and harsh reckonings. No, I will say that no, I mean, in looking at even what we looked at today, I think the bright spot is that definitely things have changed. I know it gets frustrating. You mentioned like classic sexism, patriarchy, like misogyny. Those things still exist, and so again, to end on a high point. But what's interesting is that when I step back from a big picture, sort of historical and sociological view, there have been shifts. We even addressed some of them. Like one of them has to do with the indie toys. These new folks who are making toys, clearly not even, I don't think they're, quote unquote woke because they have an agenda necessarily. I think they just recognize, as you pointed out, there were gaps. There were collectors like us who were like, why didn't I get the right Janine? Why didn't I get this character? So now that I'm making toys, I'm going to make sure you have them all, right? So I think there's
Also, like,
that piece.
and also like casting a wider net. I mean, I think we talked even like earlier last week where like Cardi B kind of reminded there's the Blurs and then there's the Blur Girls, and they are just a different
Yes.
thing entirely. And they
Yes.
are also
Yes.
a cash cow that needs to be tapped into, because I mean they deserve some love too.
Yeah.
So like there's definitely like it's not just
Sorry,
one
sorry,
monolithic
that's
thing.
just funny. We got to take their cash. We need to. They deserve our love too. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I'm like
yeah,
I
no,
was like
I like that.
when I
Yeah,
wish list, I've got a business hat on. I'm all like,
yeah,
you got
no,
to think of the
100%.
corporation. They're not
Of
thinking of
course,
like, let's do
no,
social change. They don't care.
no.
They want
They're
your
like,
money.
let's be on the cusp to get as many markets as possible, get as many dollars as possible, and yeah,
Yep.
they see the writing on the wall too. But yeah, and then I think on the other end with the nostalgia brands, what's exciting is that um, we are getting another opportunity to correct some of those mistakes. We are getting these characters that were super obscure. Like people now can get a Glenda, despite like they may not realize that it's a big deal or that they want it now, but that's a big deal for GI Joe collectors, as well as some of these other options, whether it's
Yep.
Coral or um, same goes for Motu. Like they got to figure out, they got a Marlena problem, they got to figure that out.
Mhm.
And then the customizers, at the end of the day, that's the thing that also excites me, is like we're in an era where it's like, hey, if there's a thing that you want, like, and no one's making it, then go make it. And like,
There's
if
something
you
to
don't
do.
know how, there's a ton of people who will help you now. Like it's very
Yep.
different. There's a lot less gatekeeping around that kind of stuff. Like do a search on YouTube. There's some great, like Collector 77 does some stuff where it's like, I'm just going to sit here and customize and you can just pick up tips. So
Oh
if
yeah.
not,
I mean, Transformers has been doing that for at least 15, 20 years now, where it's like the whole like third party, system where they've mastered this. There's just companies that
yes.
come and go and have been making Transformers toys that like Takara and Hasbro don't even, they're like, it's not worth legally pursuing this, but
Yep.
you can
Yep.
get whole collections, like
Yep.
whole teams, whole everything
Yep.
from one company, and they're really nice. Not that I would partake in illegal activities, but they're quite nice.
I would. So I will say, Johnny, don't worry about you. I got you. If you didn't see it, I got a $20 Canadian. So I feel like I can say nostalgia, and I think I'm good. I hit my limit. So,
All in
and
quarters.
yes, where is that Legend of Billie Jean figure? And it did take 30 years to get RC and Transformers, and like 35 to get Alita 1, and now they're everywhere, which is, yeah.
Yep.
So there's the bright spot. Get out of here with our death. Get out of here with like, no, let's talk
We'll
about,
talk about
we've
it.
got Alita 1. Last
Okay, well, like
word, sir. Yeah.
a nice, good news story about that is that like RC was for many cartoons the girl.
Yep.
There's always a girl in every cartoon, and she was it for a long time. But then, as Transformers really blasted the doors open and started making like Windblade, and they actually started making Elita One and more characters like Strongarm, RC kind of graduated and ascended up to one of Prime's generals. Whenever you see a new cartoon, she sort of retroactively slotted into the Bumblebee Wheeljack crowd. So like she's she's no longer the girl. She's one of the few women we can say like you're not the female, the girl, the pink one in the corner. You're like one of Prime's lieutenants, and that's interesting. I find that very like
She's in
fascinating,
charge.
that journey. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Awesome. Let's go ahead and leave the last word actually with we don't have enough women watching ToyTube, let's say, or making ToyTube. So awesome to have Allison always. And I need a Helen Slater Supergirl figure for my Billie Jean. Man, we'll get there. We're gonna get there. And yes, continue to do that. Now you're doing it to her, Johnny. She'll get on one. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Andrew, thank you so much for joining. Again, please head over to Gayties Toys channel. Hit that link, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you don't, or bell, so that you get to hear more whenever he uploads a video. You're saying weekly is what you're saying?
Yeah, every Saturday morning I'll get you some new ladies that unfortunately weren't done, but maybe they were since.
Yep. All right, folks. So definitely do that. Again, thank you so much. Thank you for the no, screw you, PG&E. But anyways, I got power back. All right, folks. I'll be back next Sunday, same time. Check out Andrew next Saturday. Do that, and maybe head over to Geek Dad Life right now, Hella Dope Toys, or whatever your poison is for some more Toy Tube. Thank you, everyone who's been here. Thank you again to Solo Center for the awesome super chat, and thank you, Johnny, for taking all of that money. Right on. I will see y'all later. Thank you so much. And I'm going to remember to end the stream this time because yesterday was awkward and fun.